Section 32 of Our Cats and All About Them. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Denny Sayers. Our Cats and All About Them by Harrison Weir. Section 32. Games. Cat's Cradle or Catch Cradle. Dr. Brewer, in his Dictionary of Phrase and Fable, thinks this, quote, the corrupt for cratch cradle or manger cradle, in which the infant Saviour was laid. Cratch is the French crèche, a rack or manger, and to the present hour the racks which stand in the fields for cattle to eat from are called cratches. Close quote. Of this, however, I am doubtful, though there is much reason in his suggestion. In Sussex and Kent, when I was a boy, it was commonly played among children, but always called cats, catch or scratch cradle, and consisted generally of 2 or more players. A piece of string being tied at the ends was placed on the fingers and crossed and recrossed to make a sort of cradle. The next player inserted his or her fingers, quickly taking it off, then the first catching it back, then the second again, then the first as fast as possible, catching and taking off the string. Sometimes the sides were caught by the teeth of the players, one on each side, and as the hands were relaxed, the faces were apart. Then, when drawn out, it brought the faces together. The string being let go or not, and caught again as it receded, was according to the will of the players, the catching and letting go affording much merriment. When 4 or 5 played, the string rapidly passed from hand to hand, until, in the rapidity of the motion, one missed, who then stood out, and so on until only one was left, winning the game of cats, catch, or scratch cradle. It was varied also to single and double cradle, according to the number of crossings of the string. Catch is easily converted into cats, or it might be so called from the catching or clawing at, to get and to hold the entanglement. Cat trap, bat, and ball. With the form of the trap our readers are doubtless acquainted. It will only be necessary for us to give the laws of the game. 2 boundaries are equally placed at some distance from the trap, between which it is necessary for the ball to pass when struck by the batsman. If it fall outside either of them, he loses his innings. Innings are drawn for, and the player who wins places the ball in the spoon of the trap, touches the trigger with the bat, and, as the ball ascends from the trap, strikes it as far as he can. One of the other players, who may be from 2 to half a dozen, endeavors to catch it. If he do so before it reaches the ground, or hops more than once, or if the striker miss the ball when he aims at it, or hits the trigger more than once without striking the ball, he loses his innings, and the next in order, which must previously be agreed on, takes his place. Should the ball be fairly struck and not caught, as we have stated, the out player, into whose hand it comes, bowls it from the place where he picks it up, at the trap, which if he hit, the striker is out. If he miss it, the striker counts 1 towards the game, which may be any number decided on. There is also a practice in some places, when the bowler has sent in the ball, of the striker's guessing the number of bat's lengths it is from the trap. If he guess within the real number, he reckons that number toward his game, and if he guess more than there really are, he loses his innings. It is not necessary to make the game in 1 innings. Puss in the corner. This is a very simple, but at the same time a very lively and amusing game. It is played by 5 only, and the place chosen for the sport should be a square court or yard with 4 corners, or any place where there are 4 trees or posts, about equidistant from each other, and forming the 4 points of a square. Each of these points or corners is occupied by a player. The fifth, who is called Puss, stands in the center. The game now commences. The players exchange corners in all directions. It is the object of the one who stands out to occupy any of the corners which may remain vacant for an instant during the exchanges. When he succeeds in doing so, that player who is left without a corner becomes the puss. It is to be observed that if A and B attempt to exchange corners, and A gets to B's corner, but B fails to reach A's before the player who stands out gets there, it is B and not A who becomes the puss. Cat and mouse. This is a French sport. The toys with which it is played consist of 2 flat bits of hard wood, the edges of one of which are notched. The game is played by 2 only. They are both blindfolded and tied to the ends of a long string, which is fastened in the center to a post by a loose knot, so as to play easily in the evolutions made by the players. The party who plays the mouse occasionally scrapes the toys together, and the other, who plays the cat, attracted by the sound, endeavors to catch him. Cat and mouse hunting. The game of hunt the slipper used frequently to be called cat and mouse hunting. It is generally played with a slipper, shoe, or even a piece of wood, which was called the mouse, the center player being the cat, and trying to catch or find the mouse. The boy's own book thus describes the game, but not as cat and mouse. "Several young persons sit on the ground in a circle, a slipper is given them, and one, who generally volunteers to accept the office in order to begin the game, stands in the center, and whose business it is to chase the slipper by its sound. The parties who are seated pass it around so as to prevent, if possible, its being found in the possession of any individual. In order that the player in the center may know where the slipper is, it is occasionally tapped on the ground, and then suddenly handed on to the right or left. When the slipper is found in the possession of any one in the circle, by the player who is hunting it, the party on whom it is found takes the latter player's place." Tip-cat is a game played with sticks of a certain length and a piece of wood sharpened off at each end, which is called the cat. A ring is made on the ground with chalk, or the pointed part of the cat, which is then placed in the center, one end being smartly struck by the player, it springs spinning upwards. As it rises, it is again struck, and thus knocked to a considerable distance. It is played in 2 ways, one being for the antagonist to guess how many sticks' length it is off the ring, which is measured, and if right, he goes in, or he may elect to pitch the cat, if possible, into the ring, which if he succeeds in doing, he then has the pleasure of knocking the wood called the cat recklessly, he knows not whither, until it alights somewhere on something or someone. Cat i' the hole. The name of a game well known in Fife, and perhaps in other counties. If 7 boys are to play, 6 holes are made at certain distances. Each of the 6 stands at a hole with a short stick in his hand. The 7th stands at a certain distance, holding a ball. When he gives the word, or makes the sign agreed upon, all the 6 must change holes, each running to his neighbor's hole, and putting his stick in the hole which he has newly seized. In making this change, the boy who has the ball tries to put it into the empty hole. If he succeeds in this, the boy who had not his stick, for the stick is the cat, in the hole for which he had run, is put out, and must take the ball. When the cat is in the hole, it is against the laws of the game to put the ball into it. Nursery Rhymes and Stories. These are as plentiful as blackberries and are far too numerous to be treated of here. Some are very old, such as Puss in Boots, Whittington and his Cat, Hey Diddle Diddle, etc. Some have a political meaning, others satirical, others amusing, funny, or instructive, while a few are unmeaning jangles. Dame Trot and her wonderful cat, the Cat and the Mouse, and later the White Cat, the adventures of Miss Minetta Cattina, are familiar to many of the present time. Of the older stories and rhymes, there are enough to fill a book, not of or about the cat in particular, possibly, but even that, the old combined with those of modern date, might be done. And for such information and perusal, the Popular Rhymes by J.O. Hallowell will be found very interesting, space preventing the subject being amplified here. Nor do they come within the scope and intention for which I have written respecting the cat. End of section 32.